Welcome to the Unfiltered Show, live from the Score Studios. My name is Joseph Casciaro. That's Tyler McKillop. Joining us from New York, from what can only be described as perhaps the Long Island Sports Hall of Fame behind him, is Brad Parker.
My childhood bedroom, baby. You already know, 40-year-old virgin vibes.
Like I said, the Long Island Sports Hall of Fame. All right, fellas, let's get right into it. Second round of the NBA playoffs are in full swing, and we already have what's pretty much a shocker on our hands, with the Minnesota Timberwolves going home with a 2-0 series lead over the defending champion Nuggets after a Rudy Gobert-less shit-kicking in Game 2 in Denver. So as you think about this series and you think about this series moving forward, the question is, what do you guys think is more likely? Denver comes back to win this series, or Minnesota goes on to win the championship? Tyler, let's start with you.
First off, as round two looks very, very much more enjoyable to me. I like when we don't get the crazy upsets. It gives us better product this time of the postseason. I'm a prisoner of the moment. I do it in a lot of sports. I watch football, basketball, hockey. Watching that game two was like the Nuggets might not win a single game of this series. Like the way the Timberwolves play defensively, and when Jokic kind of came off the floor in that second quarter and Murray was struggling immensely to get any offensive sets or any offensive buckets. I still think the Timberwolves are easily the deepest team in the entire postseason. I still think the Celtics are at a level that, the way that they can kind of coast to this final. The Nuggets, though, winning both games on the road, like people don't forget how difficult it is to go to Denver, to go to playing at that sea level, playing at the heights in Colorado. Stealing those two games is super impressive. Like, I could legitimately see this thing being more likely that this is over in 4 than the Timberwolves winning an NBA title.
Brad?
Ow, ow! This thing is a wrap, baby. The Wolves. I'm a Knicks fan first and foremost, but the Timberwolves, I've been riding with Kevin Garnett since I was a little kid. The last time they made it past the first round was my bar mitzvah season in 03-04, exactly 20 years ago. And all I got to say is, the door is shut, the lights are out, the butter's getting hard, the eggs are getting cool, and the jello is jiggling. The Timberwolves will sweep the Nuggets. You didn't hear it here first, because Tyler just said it basically, but you heard it here second.
And you think they'll go on to win the title?
Yes, 100%. They're going to beat the Celtics. Right. I honestly think so. Ant-Man is him. He's got that dog in him. He is a problem. He is, what is he? I mean, the second or third in points per game in the postseason amongst all
I think
guys.
He's sixth. Luka is now second, but him and Ant is sixth, I think, all-time playoff scoring average. Yeah.
What I'm saying right now, currently, amongst the guys in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, he's got to be up there.
I think he's at 32.3 points per game this postseason.
Whatever the points per game is, I think we can all agree he's the MVP of the playoffs so far.
100%.
For sure. And he's only 22. He thinks that he's the best player, not only on planet Earth, but ever to play the game. And when you have a guy with that mentality, that level of confidence, leading a team that really has nothing to lose, honestly. I mean, no one thought that they were going to be here, I don't think. I don't think anyone thought from the beginning of the season that they would be as successful as they have been. Honestly, tell me if I'm wrong.
Well, I will tell you you're wrong, Brad, because if you tune into the Scores Unfiltered weekly NBA show on YouTube, you will see that I have had faith pretty much all season in the Timberwolves being built to win a championship as presently constructed. And yet, I'll play devil's advocate here and say that, you know what, I'm going to lean, not that I'm picking the Nuggets to win this series anymore, but that if you ask me what's more likely between the Nuggets just coming back to win this series and the T-Wolves winning the title, even me, as someone who said they're capable of it all year, is still going to lean Nuggets. And it's more so just because of what's still to come for Minnesota. Like, winning a title is hard. I don't care how good you are as a team. And the Timberwolves, after, potentially beating Denver, and all of the reasons that's tough enough, as Tyler detailed, going up in the altitude, winning games in Denver. After doing that, they would have to most likely get through OKC and Boston again without the benefit of home court advantage. So as much faith as I have in the Timberwolves, I just think that is such a tall order in front of them. And so when I start to think about it that way, it's like, even though it's unlikely both ways, it's probably more likely in my mind that Denver can win 4 of the next 5 than it is that Minnesota can win another 10 total.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I
the-
never said that you didn't think the Timberwolves could win the championship. You're our NBA resident expert. I know that you know your stuff, but the majority of NBA fans out there, unless you're a diehard Wolves fan or you're a professional analyst, I don't know if everyone had, the Wolves to win the championship or reach the finals on their bingo card for the 2024 playoffs. And, I mean, I think ESPN, I read something that they're at a 21.7% chance to win the championship. The Celtics lead that, but that's big enough. The Nuggets are at 0.8% to win the finals.
But I get it, right? Like, you lose the first two games of a series at home. Like, I understand why. Yeah, probably looking at, like, historically and the probabilities, it's a tough task. Tough task for them and tough task for the Timberwolves if we're tied about winning the title.
Yeah, and I don't want to always talk about it from a betting perspective, but the value, if you looked at the Lakers series, the Nuggets were like -7.5, 8.5 at home, and then they went to LA and they were an underdog. Like, there's a ton of value for the home team when you're in Denver in a big, big way. But the T-Wolves did a great job taking away the pick and roll between Murray and Jokic, especially I thought in game 2, of course, because that game was over at half. I had the classic, half on my phone, half watching the game in the second half. So even without Rudy, I mean, the ability to defend for them with having Rudy as someone that just kind of sits in the paint defending the rim. Like, they didn't even have him manning up one-on-one with Jokic. They kind of use Cat in that way, Reed in that way. They're so multiple defensively. It's just super, super impressive.
Yeah. And by the way, Denver, that whole organization, everything about the way the Nuggets game ops work, Brad, you know this because we were sitting together in the finals last year, but they go out of their way to make sure that the opposing team knows the challenge in front of them in terms of, like, when they welcome them to Denver, they remind them about the altitude, whatever it is, 5,280 feet, like a mile high. They remind them of the potential physical side effects, like, oh, if you start to experience dizziness or lightheaded, whatever, here's why. So it's a pretty cool opening montage they have, and the Timberwolves basically listened to all that and said, we don't give a shit. We're winning the next 2 games and going back to mini.
Oh, my God. Altitude be damned. But we were there last year, and, exercise-induced asthma aside, I was feeling it for sure. I don't know how these specimens run up and down the court non-stop without a problem at that altitude. I couldn't even walk up the stairs to the media section.
Yeah, you couldn't run to the next podium.
Yeah, I don't know, Brad, not to throw you under the bus, but I don't know if that's just a Denver problem or a universal problem for you. But let's move on to the next topic. Still kind of hanging with the Timberwolves. The guy who wasn't on the floor for Game 2 but has been so integral to their unbelievable defense all year is the guy that literally just got named for the 4th time, a record-tying 4th time.
Some people weren't happy about it, though.
Defensive
Some
player
people
of
were
the
like,
year.
"Oh, Wemby should be. Should be."
Those people
be
are
up there.
wrong. As great as Wemby is, Rudy Gobert deserved this 4th defensive player of the year. Ties him with Ben Wallace and Dikembe Mutombo for most all time. Now, Rudy Gobert has often been the butt of the joke for NBA fans and players alike. I'm sure you've all seen even Draymond, the way he trolls them, but his peers in general troll him consistently. He's frequently voted the most overrated by his peers. And even if you just look at over the years, the things he's done during COVID, whatever, he's always the butt of the joke. But I think so many people have let their hate for this guy cloud their judgment of his value and his performance as an NBA player, to the point where I think he might be the most underappreciated player on the planet right now. Agree or disagree, Brad? Let's start with you. And if you disagree, then who is?
Ooh, hot take, Cash. So real quick, first of all, I'm a little salty about this one because I agree. I think that Victor Wembanyama, hands down, should have been Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, he averaged 3.6 blocks per game. Are you out of your mind? I wanted to see, the NBA fan in me wanted to see a player win Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year for the first time in NBA history. And, I mean, how do you compare? Like, Gobert's not even in the top 5 this season in blocks. I think he's at like 2.1 per game. Wemby has 1.5 more blocks than him per game and more steals. I don't understand. Are we judging it by like the teams?
Who anchored the best defense in basketball by far for a team that is still playing and as we've been talking about, defense is fueling a potential championship run.
A defense that in Game 2 did it without Rudy, though.
Fair. But okay, Brad, that's fine. But then if he's not, then who is? Who in your mind is the most underappreciated player?
Yeah, get me back on track. Because I could go on a tangent about that. I don't think it's Gobert. Naz Reid had 4 blocks last game. Naz Reid, shout out Naz Reid.
That's a good one.
He's a good one. He's a problem. So even with Gobert out, I think that the Wolves are still a problem because of Naz Reid, 6th man of the year.
He'll be back. I was surprised. Listen, Rudy. If I had my child in the morning, I'd have played that night.
Wow. Yes.
But I do.
If you have a partner right now, Tyler, I hope they're not watching this.
I do, yeah. But she won't be watching.
To answer your question, though, real quick, I see your argument with Gobert. I'm not going to disrespect him. I wanted Wemby for DPOY. I think Naz Reid is doing his thing. With all that aside, I think the most underappreciated player in the NBA, I want to go maybe De'Aaron Fox. You know what? Maybe Jimmy Butler. And I think we just saw that this postseason.
Wow.
I think Rudy fit really well with what the team wanted to do. I'm blanking right now. The T-Wolves GM had been with the Nuggets.
Tim Connolly,
until
basically built both these teams.
Built both these teams and right now is being built basically to beat this Nuggets team, which is super impressive. I think Gobert fit well with what they wanted to do. I don't think he's the most underappreciated player. The guy I had in mind, I love Brook Lopez. Absolutely love everything that he provides for that Bucks team, especially in including the title run. Just the ability to, what was he? He was second Defensive Player of the Year voting last year, right? And he's a great perimeter scorer. He's still a great rim defender, obviously. I think he's a player that goes overlooked in a big way for the Bucks, especially when in those nights they're missing Giannis. They really get a little bit extra from him. I definitely think Rudy fits well in the construct of what the T-Wolves want to do and why they've been so good defensively. And he's a super valuable piece. Despite the fact, yes, 1 game 2 without him, there's been a ton of teams in this postseason that have lost a star and won that next game. I think a game 1 without Giannis for the Bucks. Who else? A bunch of teams have missing guys at one point or another in a series and won the next night. Kawhi missing in game 1. The Clippers still win. So Gobert's still, I think, a great piece for them defensively and still super valuable. But I don't think I would say the most underappreciated.
You don't think Jimmy Butler it's a very simple, example.
I think Jimmy Butler is appropriately appreciated because I think people understand how valuable he is, especially in the playoffs. Especially the way you could have maybe said that 2 years ago, but I think especially the way the last few years have gone in the playoffs, I feel like even someone who used to doubt Jimmy Butler, now if you ask them would say, no, in the playoffs, I want that guy. He's as valuable as it gets in the playoffs. Yeah. I still think it's Rudy, man, because I'm not talking about how they measure up to their contract or who's the best bargain in the league or anything like that. I'm talking about strictly from how a player impacts the game and impacts winning versus how they're perceived both by the general public and their peers. I think the gap between those two things is still biggest for Gobert. And I'll give you an example of one of these. And this is actually completely coincidental timing. But we here at The Score, our social media team, put out a poll today on Instagram after Rudy Gobert won his 4th Defensive Player of the Year, asking whether he's a Hall of Famer. Now, 60% of our followers said, yeah, no doubt. Solid enough, I guess. 31% say not quite. 9% say not a chance. So 40% of our 2+ million followers still say this guy's not a Hall of Famer as a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. 4-time All-NBA, everything that goes into it, to me, that's exactly it right there. That's the answer. It's this guy, people do not appreciate his value on a court. And again, I know he's been the butt of the joke, and sometimes he's brought that on himself. I don't dispute that. But when you look at what he does, when you look at even, there was always the joke about how, he's a fake great defender because in the playoffs he can be played off the court because he can't move. Actually, if you look at what's happened in Minnesota, when he finally has good perimeter defenders in front of him, all of a sudden it's Rudy Gobert is actually more versatile and nimble than people gave him credit for. He can defend in space in addition to being the best rim protector in the league. And then he's a good rebounder. And on the offensive end, I know people clown him because he doesn't have the biggest bag when it comes to finishing over someone, around someone, but he's a good pick and roller, finisher, lob threat, efficient inside when he gets it. And the push shot's solid, but also one of the most underappreciated things is he is one of, if not the best screeners in basketball. Him and Sabonis are the 2 best screeners, and that is really important for an offense. So even on the offensive end, I think he has value people don't see. On the defensive end, Draymond had some quote earlier this year on his show, or he tweeted, I can't remember, where he said with Anthony Edwards there, now all of a sudden Gobert's defending for real or something. It's dude, he's been Like Gobert and Draymond and maybe Kawhi have been the best defenders of this generation. Anyone who doesn't want to accept that, like, what are you smoking?
I've got five centers to give to you. I want to hear where you would, if you get one season, you get next year between. I'm gonna give you 5 guys between them and Gobert. You tell me who you'd rather have. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different ways that you'd be deploying Gobert compared to these guys for sure. Rudy Gobert or Jared Allen.
Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert or Miles Turner.
Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert or Alperen Şengün.
Right now, probably still Gobert. Like Şengün's more talented, but
Then this one, Lopez or Gobert.
That one's tough, but I'd probably still lean Gobert because of the stage of their careers they're in.
Okay, last one then. Kristaps Porzingis or Rudy Gobert.
Gobert, because even though Porzingis is more versatile, Gobert's more durable. And also, one thing, a very random thing with Gobert, I know it doesn't mean anything because it was one series, but like even free throw shooting, which everyone's ragged on him forever. The Clippers laughed at him when he airballed a free throw this year. He is like a just under 64% career free throw shooter and was like that this season too. And then in that first round series, hit 22 of 25 free throws. So if he starts doing that consistently, just another notch on his belt and probably something else people won't appreciate because it's Rudy Gobert and no one appreciates how great this guy is.
So what about I didn't even have him on the list, but maybe I'd go. What about Sabonis? I'm surprised you said all 5 of these guys you go Gobert.
Sabonis, maybe I go. That's where I probably lean Sabonis.
Okay.
I think, obviously much better offensive player who like on offense can run around.
Yes.
But even then, you could make the argument, look, offense and defense are equal at the end of the day. And Rudy Gobert is a walking elite defense unto himself. So,
All right, well, we'll move along.
okay, let's shift gears to teams and a star who aren't playing right now because their asses already got sent home. Reports indicate that the Clippers are hoping Paul George extends for less than the max, as Kawhi did. But that PG wants his full max. And honestly, as he should, like as a 34-year-old, this is his last chance for like one last mega deal. Understand him not wanting to take a pay cut, a hometown discount. But the reports also indicate that the Sixers and Magic are the 2 teams most linked to him. So where is the best fit for Paul George going forward? Is it Philly? Is it Orlando? Is it still in LA? Is it somewhere else I haven't mentioned? Tyler, let's start with you.
There's so much to get into with this. I don't know where to start. The first is if Kawhi leaves LA, like this is a unmitigated disaster. I think there's a
PG.
Sorry, Kawhi. If PG leaves LA, I think there's a lot of leverage that PG obviously has over LA with the new arena. Like this is not. I know Ballmer's got all the money in the world. This team cannot afford to go into a new arena without their super team, their core 3. So I think eventually they'll give George what he wants. It's about whether or not he actually wants to stay there, which I would think he would, being that it's LA. How do you? I want to throw this back to you. How do you feel Paul George fits in to, let's say, a team like like if you go search Paul George's name, the amount of beat writers from various cities that are writing about, hey, how does Paul George or could Paul George be someone this team is targeting? I want to start with the Magic. Like, where does Paul George fit in terms of if you're winning an NBA championship? Where is he? Is he your second? Is he your third?
I think it depends on how the rest of the team is built.
Right.
And I mean, okay, I'll just give you my answer and then I'll kind of throw it back to you guys. But that's the reason I think it's Philly, and I think it's like without a doubt the answer is Philadelphia.
I completely agree.
For so many reasons. One, I think. We were talking about underappreciated players. Paul George might be in that category now because he has had some disappointing postseasons, and obviously his ability to stay healthy, durability is a very important
He's 34
ability.
now. That's the big thing I think about is if I know you're at this point in the NBA, you're 3-4 year deals, and you can live with that with a guy like him, but I just don't see his like to the Magic. To me, I don't think it makes sense. Like I don't think that's a guy you add that takes you. Sure, you're going to go to the next level of sorts, but is not the level of a contender in the East, at least in my opinion, unless you're going to get great development from Banchero. I think you're still trying to find out, what that top level is for guys like Wagner, like Suggs, and a few other pieces there. I think he doesn't make sense for Orlando. I think Orlando needs to stay patient. Same with who else has been discussed as well. Some other younger team I'm forgetting.
It's mostly been the Magic and the Sixers, and then it kind of and then
there's the Rockets. I've seen the Pistons. I've seen
the Pistons have the most cap space, right? But it's like again,
don't go to
Detroit. What is he
do
doing? Is he elevating
Okay.
them from 15th in the East to 11th, or maybe like a playing
Yeah,
team? Whereas in
exactly.
Philly, Paul George, for what he is at this stage of his career, which look on a good team, even a contending team, Paul George probably is still a number 2 guy offensively. And some nights, if you need him to be, he can be a number 1. But
Exactly.
if you want him in like what's probably best suited for him at this stage of his career and as he continues to age, probably like a number 3 guy, like
Yeah, that
tertiary
would be
scorer.
perfect.
And
for him.
behind Joel
that's
Embiid
exactly-
and Tyrese Maxey, that's what he would be. And then him and Embiid would provide amazing defensive cover for like Maxey's improved on that end, but still shoddy at the point of attack. But you put those 3 guys together, they fit together, they balance each other out, and everything, like the puzzle pieces just fit in ways that say a doomed big 3 like Phoenix's doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And also, the thing with Philly is they have the cap space to say sign a max level free agent like Paul George, then re-sign Maxey, and still have wiggle room to fill out their roster without touching that second apron that has doomed a team like Phoenix, for example. So like Philly, I think makes the most sense if you're just strictly talking about on-court fits and how he can complement the other 2 guys there.
Yep.
It also makes the most sense in terms of which team would then be the best and have the most flexibility still after that. So that's kind of like, selfishly just from as like a general basketball fan wanting to see the best possible outcome for all these guys. I think Paul George and Philly makes the most sense. And I also think him and Embiid together can kind of help each other vanquish each of their postseason demons. And he's insurance for an Embiid because you know that by the time the spring comes, Embiid's going to be banged up. He's not going to be 100%. Having Paul George there eases the burden on him. It's insurance if he does get banged up. In so many ways, this fits.
I truthfully and honestly feel that Paul George is not over the hill. I think that Paul George has a lot left in the tank, a ton of basketball left. I'll make an argument he still has a little bit of prime in him. And I think that it might be a hot take. I think that a healthy PG paired with Joel Embiid, who's definitely in his prime, and Maxey, who's not even close to reaching his prime yet, in my opinion, I think that team might be one of the best big 3 that we've ever seen. And I think that, all signs point to it because, you take Paul George healthy, you take Embiid healthy, which is a stretch, and you take Maxey, what is that, 70 points per game, and defense, offense, unselfishness, a bit of everything. And again, like to your point, Cash, at this point in his career, I don't think he minds playing third fiddle.
Exactly.
So I think that team goes from, pinnacle, like maybe we make it to they haven't made an Eastern Conference Finals since 01.
2001. Yeah.
Right. I was 10 years old. That's insane. I think that they are a lock, granted they're healthy, to make the Eastern Conference Finals last year if they add Paul George. Hot take.
No, I get it, man, because they played at a 65-win pace when Embiid was in the lineup this season. Now take that team and just replace Tobias Harris with Paul George.
Yeah. I'm weary of just the thought of, I think we've taken LeBron's success over the course of now being 39 years old and expecting guys like a Harden, like a PG to be able to age and continue to play at that type of level. I think he still has a couple years left of that. The Clippers are in a mess because I know with them, if they give him what he wants, they'll be in that second apron and they kind of feel like there's nothing they can do. They're just going to have to keep running things back. So the flexibility that the Sixers have is definitely beneficial. I don't see this going any other way than those 2 teams, honestly. Yeah. Everyone else that's having the conversation from a Houston, from a Detroit is just kind of dreaming. Like there's no reason for Paul George other than money, which is going to be a driving factor, but not the deciding factor in my mind for him too. So
I don't think Orlando would be the best fit. As much as I would love to see him, in that nucleus, that young nucleus of guys that are up and coming, the Franz Wagners of the world, and the Suggs, and Cole Anthony, who I think he could help tremendously, and even, of course, Paolo. It would be fun to watch him play that, veteran leadership mentor role, for sure, but I don't think that that's going to really help the Magic in any way outside of mentorship, because I don't think that they're ready yet. I think they'll be there soon, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think they're ready for that. I don't think Paul George saves the team or brings them to the next level.
Agreed. And like the Sixers and the Magic can give him the same level of max contract. Mm-hmm. So, and every report is that the Sixers are willing to fully max him. So it's not like Orlando could give him more money than Philly. Now, the only thing that could possibly lead Paul George to Orlando, in my opinion, is if he really cares about every last dollar that much, no state income tax in Florida. But like, other than that, if you're just looking at the general contract they can give him, it's equal.
Yeah.
And again, everything we've said for Philly and why it's a perfect fit, they could definitely be a contender for years. You know, him in a third option 2 years from now, even at the max, is fine. The contract won't look that bad. Like, it's got to be Philly. And just last note on the Clippers, to your point of like how they would be in that second apron if they re-sign him, and even if they re-sign Harden.
Harden too.
The thing that puts the Clippers in such a tough spot is, at the same time, if they let both those guys walk, if they lose Paul George and James Harden, they still wouldn't have max level cap space. So they have no avenues to replace those guys.
Yeah.
But then, so those, like, they kind of have to re-sign them, but then if they re-sign them, then they can't do much else with the roster. Like, they're in a weird spot.
I know.
You don't think?
I
was gonna say, you don't think that you don't think that there's a part of you that thinks James Harden might be whispering in Paul George's ear, "Hey, don't go to Philly."
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's possible. I think it's actually very possible.
It's
he might
probably
say that,
like an absolute.
given how he feels about Daryl Morey. But
avoid all
I also
that.
think, but I also think Paul George kind of won't care. Like, I think Paul George will make the decision that's best for him. It's not like him and James Harden are best friends or have been like playing together for years. They played together for half a season.
Is it crazy to say? I know we're getting off track here. Is it crazy to say it's more likely that Harden's back than PG is back?
No, I think
I think Harden's been pretty happy.
Yeah, that, and I also don't think Harden can command a max on the open market the way PG can. Like, I think PG's for sure getting a max on the open market if he wants it. I'm not as convinced James Harden is.
Is Harden 36?
No, I think he's a year older than PG. I think he's like 35, or he'll be 35 this year, I think, or 34. Around the same age, maybe a year older. But yeah, definitely less options in LA than there is in Philly, and in Orlando again. It's just like, less avenues to be as great a team as there is.
Yeah. James Harden's only 30. He's only 34, guys. He'll be 35.
He's 34. Okay.
Right before the start of next season.
That's pretty old for a guy that, has been known to look like he's wearing a fat suit when he walks out of a town.
Eventually.
All right, before we get out of here, Tyler, I think you had some thoughts on the Patrick Beverley situation.
God.
What are you thinking on the Pat Bev situation?
Is this comparable to the Mount? Like, it's obviously not to the degree, but like the interaction with fans in that degree is basically the Malice at the Palace. Like I don't want to throw the shade that's been thrown at Pat, but like people took their opportunity from this incident. This is just like black and white, like a horrendous no. This is not like, what Jamal Murray did the other night. This is interaction with fans who have things to say that he said or, he won't repeat. I saw Pat Bev's podcast, but
he might have reason to have felt offended. I don't know. We don't know what was said. And again, it's possible maybe the fan said something that crossed the line. But in that case, there's things you can do. Get them removed, get them kicked out. I know he said he doesn't like doing that, but it's like, well, you can't say, oh, I don't like getting fans kicked out for things they say, but then I'm also okay throwing a ball at their head. Like, that doesn't really equate. Just get them kicked out, save your own money, and save your own ass. Because, I mean, okay, maybe this is taking it too far because I like Pat Bev, and I think another guy who's probably, from a basketball perspective, might be underrated. Like, and I thought he was solid enough in the playoffs, but he's a free agent. He's a little older. I don't know how eager teams are to necessarily sign him now.
Yeah.
Like,
he's definitely still going to have a role somewhere because of his ability as a defender, but it'll definitely play a part in whatever happens for him this offseason.
We need him in the league no matter what. We need guys like him for sure. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that what he did was right. I did do somewhat of a deep dive into what went on. I'm pretty sure that Pat Bev and the team, according to articles I've read, did make attempts to have the fan removed or at least get security involved to some aspect of it. And I'm not justifying anything. All I'm saying is that maybe they did try, and maybe we got to look into this. Maybe there's more of a matter there that we don't know of. Whereas,
listen.
Maybe security
Brad,
failed.
You're the further expert on this, right? You had you got a viral video out there on this whole situation.
I mean, we're at 900K. I mean, who's counting? Go check it out. We pinned it on the Scores Instagram. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for fan involvement and root on your team and talk trash, but there is a line that fans do cross. Now, that doesn't warrant a player. You know what? A player always has to be bigger and rise to the occasion of taking the mature route. But at the same time,
with Pat Bev of the.
I was going to say, Pat Bev has been known to be a bit of a sore loser in the past. So
Yeah,
Anyways.
that's
yeah.
tough.
And the reports were that like the fans said something about 1-2-3 Cancun when they
Yeah.
were huddling, but then Pat Bev said no. I think it was worse than that or
He
something.
said there was more to it.
Right.
Exactly.
So who knows? Maybe we'll never know what the fans said. But again, you just like Brad said, the player has to be the bigger person. And especially Pat Bev, a guy who tells opponents that they're too small for like every time he scores one of his 3 baskets a game.
Was that that was the same game, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. Like an hour and 45 minutes earlier from that moment.
I'm actually going to Cancun on Friday for a week. So
Well,
I'm hoping
Maybe you'll see Pat Bev there because
I'm hoping he's there, and I'm certainly going to ask him about it if he is there.
please do, Brad. Please report back to us if you do encounter Patrick Beverley
What?
or
Say
any
less.
of the eliminated NBA players and teams in Cancun. I think that's probably our cue to wrap it up. Brad talking about his Cancun vacation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So for episode 1 of Unfiltered, that's Tyler, that's Brad, I'm Joseph Casciaro. Thanks for watching.